set up the meeting needs to be the one to start the recording. Hello, everyone. I'm Marcy Miller. I'm part of the I-84 Danbury project team. Welcome to our 6th Project Advisory Committee meeting. We're happy to have you with us, and it looks like we're getting a decent turnout. People are still coming in, but much of my stuff is introductory, and then I'll turn it over to the technical experts to start talking about our concepts. I'm going to spend just 2 minutes in case we have anyone new, just to go through a little bit about Teams. I think we used Teams last time, but you know, everyone has their favorite virtual meeting tool, or program, and this is one of a few. So I just want to remind you of how to participate today. And this is a committee meeting, so you know, we're not looking to be super formal. We're going to take regular breaks for conversation. People can raise their hands or put in the chat box and we'll read them aloud. We have a number of different ways, and we want people just to feel comfortable to participate. So today I want to let you know who our presenters are. We have, I'm going to give you the debrief, and it's going to be very short, and then I'm going to turn it over to Yolanda. And Sharat, whom you all should know, he's the project manager from CDM Smith. Ray Culver will also be presenting on concepts, and Janine Gowan, as well as Andy Fessenmeyer from the department will be closing up our meeting today. All right, so as you all know, the meeting is recorded because we just started it. We always post the recordings and the presentations and the meeting summaries and any supplemental materials that may be applicable to the project website. So please go there. We'll let you know when things go up. You can always video conference in, which most of you have done, or call in via phone. I do see one phone number. So for the person on the phone, you know, feel free to chime in at regular breaks. And, you know, the one thing I would ask is that you do introduce yourself so we know who is speaking. We're asking everyone to unmute yourselves. You know, if I hear background noise, I might mute you, but you can unmute yourself when you want to speak. You don't have to wait for me. And I'm the moderator, so I'll read questions from the chat if you want to put them in there. And like I said, everything's going to go on the website after the meeting. All right, next slide. All right, so again, this is just where your buttons are in Teams, which is the software program that we are using. Next slide. Things kind of differ slightly based on whether you're using a tablet or a computer or a phone. Hopefully you're using a tablet or a computer. To turn your video on and off, you know, the little green button is the camera. That's that one. The mic on and off is the mic button. Next slide. You know, I find it very helpful. I watch the participant list, so you can also see who else is up there and who's raising their hand. That's where that shows up. And that's that button that looks like the little people. Next slide. And this is what it looks like. Next slide. The chat pane, if you do not want to talk and you just want to type in a question or a comment, I will read that aloud and have the technical experts answer that. And that's this button that looks like the little caption. So next slide. And when you type it in, on the lower left side of your screen, you'll see a place where you can enter your comment, and then make sure just to hit that little arrow button on the lower right side so that it gets submitted and we can see it. Next slide. All right, if you want to talk, you know, if this is a pretty laid back meeting, we don't mind people chiming in at regular times. But again, if you hear something during the course of someone's section of the presentation and you know you want to speak to it, raise your hand. And when we get to, you know, a break, I will make sure to ask you to speak, and you can ask your question to the people. Next slide. All right, and that's what it looks like. So I will see little yellow hands. You know, we love emojis. Next slide. And then just so you know, there's other functions. The way Teams work is you can click on this ellipsis, and can you go to the next slide? And there's a lot of other things that you can do here. And one of the big things is that you can go full screen or a small screen. So that's one way to make the slides look bigger. We're going to be showing a lot of graphics today, so that might be something that's useful for you. But again, do what you're comfortable. Next slide. All right, I think we're all kind of set with Teams, but I do want to just take one quick pause before I hand it over to Yolanda and ask if anyone is having trouble, you know, or do they know of a coworker that's struggling to get in. Please put it in the chat and we will work with you offline. All right, let's get started. Yolanda.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Marcy, and hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our six-pack meeting. You know, last time we met back in November, we were showing you one concept, and today we have four. So I'm going to begin our presentation giving you a brief pack update, and then we'll have Sharad and Ray and Janine go over four concepts with you today. At the end of each concept, we'll just pause so that we can hear your feedback and in case you have any questions. And then after that, Andy will go over some upcoming concepts, next steps, and then we'll close the presentation with more discussion and your questions. Okay, so our pack update, if you can go to the next slide, please. So at our last pack meeting, since our last PAC meeting, I should say, you know, we attended a Chamber of Commerce leadership meeting earlier this year. So PJ Prunty, as you know, a member of our PAC, invited us actually 2 years ago to give the Chamber an introduction to our project. And now 2 years later, he asked us to give an update, and we were happy to do that and you know, glad for the opportunity. Another thing we did, and it's very recent because it happened yesterday, is that we launched our concepts page on our website. So right now, if you go to our concept page, which is on if you go to the website and you click on the project planning button, you'll find a number of concepts, our first one and a couple of the ones that we're discussing today. And each concept has a summary and also a map that'll help you maneuver and learn about what the concept is about. As more concepts are completed, we'll be uploading those on the website as well. A couple other things that we've done to continue our outreach efforts. As many of you know, we had a fall newsletter last year. Marcy and FHI are working on the next one. We hope to get it out for you this summer. And also FHI and Marcy are continuing to create more social media content. So we hope that you'll find that information interesting and good to know. Next slide, please. Okay, so our draft purpose statement, many of you are familiar with this slide, and it's also a good reminder because this draft purpose statement is our guide as we develop and as we evaluate concepts, so that as a concept is developed and we look at how it reduces congestion on the highway, we're also looking at what happens outside the highway in the local roadway network. And similarly, as we look at mobility, we're looking at not only mobility on the highway, but what happens outside the highway. And so part of improving mobility is looking at these intermodal connections as well. So we're looking at things like, you know, the bus services, the kind of bus services you have available in the area. As you know, Rick is a member of our PAC from Hart. We're also looking at rail and the secondary roads, and also our users, because our users are not just the interstate motorists or the truck operators. They're also motorists on the secondary roads, transit users, as well as pedestrians and bicyclists. So what we're trying to do is not only look at just the highway, but also the big picture as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we, you know, how are we developing, or actually, let me go back. How is the project purpose being used? Again, as we develop concepts, as they become evaluated, each concept is compared to the project purpose statement. So if a concept meets the project purpose, it moves on to the next phase. If it doesn't, it's eliminated. And then as you can see in this third category, it's a maybe. Some concepts partially meet the project purpose, and for those, we will see what happens when they're combined with another concept. Next slide, please. All right, so before I hand over the presentation to Sharat, let's just take a look at where these concepts that we're talking about are located. So the first concept we're going to talk about is concept 2, which is a collector distributor road. So that is a collector distributor road that would run parallel with I-84 in both directions, and it's located in the middle of the project limits between exits 5 and 6. Another concept is concept number 6, and that's located by interchanges 3 and 4 by the Seeger Street ramp. The third concept is concept number 9, and that really stretches along the project corridor. And so that is putting Route 7 in the median. So in other words, what would happen if we separated the Route 7 traffic from I-84, Route 7 being in the median and I-84 being outside of the median, outside of Route 7. And so Ray will talk about that. And the last concept we're going to talk about today is concept number 7, which is the tunnel, and that is located pretty much between interchanges 2 and exit 5 on the western part of the project. And I'd like to just point out something to you. As you notice, I'm referencing a lot of these concepts with numbers, concept 2, concept 6. These numbers really are just tracking devices, because as a concept gets developed, we just assign it a number so we can keep track of it. So the numbers really don't mean anything other than a name for each concept. And with that, I'd like to hand over the presentation to Sharat so he can talk about the concepts and the evaluation. Sharat.
Thanks, Yolanda. I'm going to try to, since I was sharing my screen, hopefully, can everyone hear me? Hopefully.
Yes.
We can.
All right, great. So we're going to go back and look at some of the evaluation tools or elements that we used as part of concept 1. So I know the last time we met was back in November. So we're going to revisit those concepts again, those evaluation tools again. Oh, there you go. So if you remember, when we looked at concept 1, we had looked at 5 different elements. The first one was traffic operations, which basically was looking at whether this concept will reduce congestion, improve mobility, as was stated in the draft purpose statement. Will this concept make any changes to I-84? Would I-84 meet design standards? The third criteria was constructability, which is whether this concept can be constructible. The fourth element was the environmental resource analysis, whether there's an important environmental resource that may be impacted by this concept. And the last one was the construction cost estimate, which is to determine what the construction cost would be for this concept. So these were the 5 elements we had evaluated concept 1 in. And what we're going to do is apply some or all of the elements in the 4 concepts that we are discussing today. So I'm going to start off with concept 2. And as Yolanda said, this is the collector distributor road that's located in the center section, which essentially is the downtown section. So it spans somewhere between right between exit 4 and 5 and ends between Tamarack and exit 7. So this is kind of about 1.5 miles long. It's located right in that yellow box area around 5 and 6. So just as an overview, what is a collector distributor road? So as the term says, collector distributor, it collects the traffic and distributes the traffic. And if you can see on your right, the toolbox that we are using here is the collector distributor road toolbox, which is a pair of these orange lines. So as Yolanda was talking about the road being bi-directional, and that's what these arrows represent, is it's a one-way road going eastbound parallel to the highway, and a one-way road going westbound parallel to the highway. It's connecting to all these local streets that serve the downtown. And the reason for this, if you remember, was a third of the traffic that goes through the main line or goes through the highway is local. So the purpose of the collector distributed road is to take that third of the traffic out of the main line, which helps I-84 in this area. What does it do now? So we have connections now to Main Street, North Street, and Tamarack Avenue. So North Street and Tamarack have full access. So today, North Street is only half access. You can only get access to and from the east. Tamarack doesn't have any access. So this also provides an opportunity to connect to Tamarack Avenue, which essentially also provides access to the Danbury Hospital and downtown. In addition, what the collector distributed road allows to do is to improve the pedestrian and bicycle use. So in terms of that, the pedestrians can possibly walk on a sidewalk that is along the collector distributed road. So the east-west travel can be accommodated on the sidewalks for a pedestrian. And for the bicycle use, it would be more of a shoulder use. It could be a dedicated bike lane if that is so perceived in the future. But again, opens up that opportunity where someone could travel in low volume, relatively low volume environment. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch over to the actual presentation of the collector distributed road. So we'll switch over to the storyboard or story map that we have prepared, similar to concept 1 for concept 2. Anyone has any questions at this point while we're switching over? Sorry. Pat? Oh,
Yeah, I'm sharing. It's give it a minute here. We unshare and share again.
Yeah, I can see it now. I can. Do I share or you share?
I'll share. It just takes a minute to load, so.
So about that, right. Okay, so the plan that Pat has on the screen shows the limits of the collector distributed road, and shows that the collector distributed road is essentially spanning the center section of the corridor. So it starts somewhere near exit 4 and ends just east of east of Tamarack Avenue and ties into 84. It's about 1.5 miles in length, and it provides access in both directions to Main Street, North Street, and Tamarack Avenue. So if you look at this Main Street exit, what happens today is takes away the collector distributed road would take in place of all the ramps that connect to Main Street. So the eastbound and the westbound ramps come off of Main Street. So anyone who wants to go to Main Street would now have to egress off of that collector distributed road. They would come to an intersection with Main Street, and the intersection would be on both ends of the collector distributed road. So Main Street would be tying into the eastbound leg and also on the westbound leg. So if you go back to what we were just saying about 1/3 of the traffic, that collector distributed road now pulls 1/3 of the traffic from the highway. So it gets pretty heavy in volume when all that traffic gets to downtown. So what happens is a lot of those intersections that you see like Main Street, a lot of those streets that you see like Main Street, North Street, and Tamarack Avenue get wider in cross section. They get almost 5 lanes wide, which because of the lights, they have to have turn lanes. So they'll be much wider in size. Intersections are larger. Sometimes they even can go 2 lanes. So those are pretty wide intersections. They're mainly there to accommodate the heavy flow on the CD road. Also in North Street now, you can kind of see the westbound access. So someone who wants to get to I-84 westbound from North Street can now use that access point at that intersection where Pat is showing the intersection tying into the CD road. And eastbound, you can also get off at North Street. So if someone wants to go to downtown, they can get off at North Street to and from the west now. So that's an additional benefit of that collector distributed road. Now traversing east to Tamarack Avenue. So Tamarack Avenue now is a new access point for I-84. So someone going on 84 can now get to Tamarack Avenue. There'll be 2 intersections, 1 in each direction at Tamarack Avenue. Now, because there's an intersection with Tamarack Avenue and the CD road, the size of these intersections get large and they're almost 5 lanes wide in some places. And that requires some widening in that area. And those signals would essentially control the flow of traffic. And as you'll see in a minute or so what that does to the traffic conditions. It gets pretty busy on the CD road, both going eastbound and westbound. So going further east of that, the CD road then, if you scroll up, Pat, to the place where the CD road ties in, so you'll see that the CD road ties back onto the highway. So if someone wants to get to downtown now, there's no direct access from 84 to any of the downtown exits. They have to enter and exit from the CD road. So that's kind of what's happening as part of this concept, is to essentially have the CD road function as the collector distributor of traffic for the downtown. With that, I'll probably take a pause, and if anyone has any questions while we're switching over.
Yeah, Sharad, hi, it's Dave. I just wondered, I think the graphic might be inaccurate. It's showing like 4 lanes with no shoulder. I think that graphic was supposed to show. Do you have a typical section for that?
Yeah, Dave, in a second.
Okay, thank you.
Trying to share my screen in a second. It should be 3 lanes, Dave. Maybe it's a tying point, must be 4.
Yeah, I think that probably the graphic just showed a dashed line where it should have been a solid white.
Oh, okay. Thanks for noticing that. So it is going to be so Dave's point, it is going to be a 3-lane 84. So this is how it looks if you are driving or if you're at ground level. You'll see the CD road going on kind of the lower level, and the highway would be at the upper level. And you'll have 3 lanes in each direction. The CD road would be 2 lanes in each direction, and there's going to be a retaining wall, a wall that kind of spans the entire length of the CD road. To essentially, the retaining wall is holding that 84 traffic. And so we have a shoulder that's on both sides. These are fully compliant shoulders. The shoulder for the CD road would be wide enough that someone who wants to ride a bicycle could ride on it. It's going to be wide enough, and also potentially could have sidewalks on both sides. So that's what the CD road would look like in each direction, and also related to how it would look like to 84. So when we look at the traffic conditions in this concept, second to play, and you'll see this video that shows the traffic conditions of pink and red are traffic is stopped, green and the dark green is traffic is moving at a pretty good pace, and you'll see that in the case of 84, where the traffic is moving pretty smoothly, and that's reason is 1/3 of that traffic is now on the CD road. So as you can see from this video, there's a lot of pink and red at these intersections, and a lot of that is because of the amount of traffic that is hitting these traffic lights. And you'll see this is Tamarack Avenue here on the east side, this is North Street, and this is Main Street. And as you see in the morning, it gets to be busy because morning, all of the traffic is going towards New York. So the CD roads get a little busy. The traffic is not as congested that it would back up to the highway, but it would be significant congestion on the CD road at these intersections in the westbound direction mainly. And when we go to the PM time period and we play the same video, what we'll see is this is again Tamarack Avenue. You can kind of see that eastbound red color now, and that's mainly traffic coming home from New York and other points to the west and trying to get to access different points. So here's Tamarack Avenue, and in a second I'll show you Main Street. So you can kind of see this eastbound movement gets fairly busy during the evening hour. So what this concept does is helps 84 a lot because you can see, how 84 gets all these green color on it, because a lot of that traffic that was local traffic on 84 gets moved over to the CD road, and the CD road now takes up all that traffic, but it also establishes those connection points. So now Main Street can access both ways, North Street can access both ways, and Tamarack can access both ways. So Madison is the other location we had in this concept, which now has a connection. One of the reasons we established a connection for Madison is the Golden Hill intersection on Main Street had to be closed off because of a heavy traffic coming in from Main Street and blocking that intersection at all times. So we had to close that access point from Golden Hill Road and allow all that traffic to now use Madison to get back on the CD road and then get to 84. So that Golden Hill connection that you have from North Street, coming here, would no longer be there. They would have to connect through Madison to get to this so-called grade separated intersection or separated intersection at Madison. So that's kind of the change that we had to make based on the traffic conditions that we see that will happen on the CD road. So looking at the analysis summary, what we found as you noticed, is the concept reduces congestion on 84 within the concept limit. So as Yolanda was talking about this partial concept, one of the elements of this concept is it's only limited to exits 4 and Tamarack Avenue. So it's a very confined concept. So it helps 84 within those limits. But as soon as you go back to existing, or we go back to existing conditions, it turns out it basically has to come back to what 84 is and merges back into or ties in back to the existing 84 condition. So it increases congestion where 84 is meeting its current condition. So it's a concept that works well within the limits of the concept. Experience congestion on the CD roads, as you saw, the pink and the red on the CD roads, and during peak periods, the congestion starts to build up on the CD road, and also on the local street intersections, but they tend to become wider and have to be accommodated with turn lanes to allow those intersections to function properly. As a pro, we go to pros and cons now. So the positive thing on this concept is the congestion part on 84. As we talked about, the connection to Tamarack Avenue, now being the only access being Main Street to and from the west to get to the hospital. This concept allows access from Main Street, North Street, and most importantly, Tamarack Avenue. So someone can get to the hospital using the CD road directly. Also improves connection to the downtown, and also, as I said, provides opportunity to improve pedestrian and bicycle use. As a negative or a con, this CD road experiences some congestion and delay, mainly during peak periods. You see, based on the direction someone's traveling, going westbound, they see CD road in the westbound direction, or going towards New York being congested. If you're going eastbound, the congestion builds up on the direction going towards the eastbound CD road. The intersections get wider because they have to be accommodated for the CD road to move traffic along. The construction of this CD road will take several stages and phases, mainly because we are building this CD road within the existing footprint of the highway. And also 84 would have to be reconstructed because we are building, you kind of see the walls along 84 to support this highway, and also to keep the CD road so close to the highway. So that construction will require multiple stages and phases. There are potentially some right-of-way impacts. Certainly the cross-section, as you saw, with the 3 lanes in each direction and the 2 lanes of the CD road in each direction tends to be wider, get to a wider footprint. So CD road becomes a large footprint in general. In terms of construction cost estimate, if you remember back in November when we had created these different cost ranges for the CD road, for concept 1, the cost ranges went from $500 million to over greater than $5 billion. So this cost comes around less than $500 million. This cost does not include right-of-way and engineering. So it's a very high level preliminary engineering cost estimate, and it's mainly associated with the work involved within the limits of the concepts, which is between exit 4 and Tamarack Avenue. Our recommendation in the end is this concept has some merit for reducing congestion, improving mobility on the highway, and as you see, has some merit because it does in fact help 84. Again, going back to the point that this is a partial concept and kind of looks at within the limits of 84. So it certainly has the opportunity to be tied in with other concepts that are being looked at in other parts of the corridor. So it only has merit for the area that this concept focuses on. And we feel this should be evaluated further in the next phase. So there may be opportunities of tying this concept to something else to the west. That's With that, I will pause here for any questions or any comments. I'm happy to go back and talk about any of the concept elements if someone has a question on.
Yeah, sure. I have two questions. Sharon has a question from the city, and then Barry also has his hand raised. So let
Sure.
Sharon go.
Hi, everybody. So you actually answered one of my questions. I had two questions, Chirag, about needing additional right-of-way and how much that would need, but you just said it would be done within the existing footprint of the highway. So the other question I had to do with grade, and have you looked at how those tie in, like on Main Street? How are you gonna be chasing grade that whole way?
So to answer your first question, I think Sharon, I just want to correct you. The right-of-way question is that what I was indicating was that the concept would require multiple stages, but it's because it's being built in the same alignment now. So it would certainly require possibly more widening just to get those properties to accommodate the construction activity. So there are impacts to right-of-way on this concept. So your question about Main Street and trying to tie into Main Street to meet those grades, we haven't looked at in too much detail, but that is something we'll be looking at probably in the next few phases. But there will be some impacts because this footprint, as you saw from that cross section we had, is pretty significant. Let me pull that over quick. So this does get into, the tie-ins here on these ends. We'll have to meet grade at some point, and it could become a concern on this
Right.
concept. That alone could be not a good thing for this concept to move forward. We have a rough sense of some right-of-way information. We haven't really dwelled into that too much at this level, because right now we are kind of looking at more in terms of how this concept will perform purely from the draft purpose. But that is something that we would probably be looking at when we get to the next phase in more detail. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Barry, I think you had a question.
Yes, I have two questions. One of which I had three questions. One of which was the right of way. The other two, I don't think you're getting too close at Tamarack to the Still River, but I'm wondering what environmental consideration has been given to all of to this part of the deal. And the other thing is, did I hear you say that you will not be able to turn from this collector distributor road onto Main Street, going up Golden Hill Road?
Correct. So, Pat, if you don't mind to go up, I'm going to try to see if there's a way to have you kind of show that Main Street area. I'm going to try to. Pat, I'll let you share the screen. Thank you, Pat. And if you can zoom into the Main Street section. Yeah, so Barry, to answer your question, what is happening is, if you can zoom in a little bit more, Pat, in the Golden Hill area. So what we had to do is, because the traffic at Main Street gets so busy, that the Golden Hill intersection that was right across the current westbound ramps, the ramps are being closed or eliminated. So the traffic would always block Golden Hill and traffic from Golden Hill will not be able to get to Main Street.
But you'll be able to turn from the CD road onto Main Street.
Correct. They would be turning. Oh yeah, absolutely. They'll be able to turn, but there will be no connection to Golden Hill. We are taking away that even the right turn in from Main to Golden.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
So people who are
Golden Hill Road would just keep going where? Like, what would happen to Golden Hill Road?
The backside of it, the Golden Hill traffic that comes from North Street would now be able to use Madison. So they could get to those streets and get to Madison, where there's a new interchange to the CD road. So they could connect to eastbound or westbound CD road through Madison.
That's where I live. That's where I am at this exact moment, is up in that area. And I mean, once you get to the west, the side of Madison that's west of the highway, which is where I am, those are very narrow, quiet streets, they are going to be overrun with
Right.
traffic.
Right. It is a very valid concern. So one of the things is, we haven't gone into the level of detail. So one of the things that we have evaluated to date is how the CD road would function and what we need to do to make the CD road work better. So as we get into the details, some of the things that you're mentioning in terms of potential impacts to the neighborhoods and, cut through traffic and things like that.
I'm telling you right now, Sharad, I live in that area. If you go a little bit north in that picture, you'll see a lake, a rectangularly shaped lake. That is our lake, Lake Wakawana. And just to the west of that, you see a circular driveway, or right near there is a church. Just to the south and west of the lake, that right there. Their property comes awfully close to the area that we control, the Juniper Ridge Tax District, which I represent. And if they had 5 more feet of land, they could build an exit coming out of there onto our quiet streets just to the right, just to the east of that body of water. I cannot tell you how much we have fought that over the years to make sure that the traffic coming in and out of this area does not disrupt the bucolic community that we have. That access to Madison, closing off Golden Hill Road, will throttle all of that. It will turn this into the Indianapolis 500. I am on record, and one of the reasons I joined this is to make sure something like that does not happen.
Appreciate your comment, Barry, and certainly something that we will look at more closely. And I think Golden Hill is something. So when we were looking at the performance of Golden Hill related to how CD road works, it was getting quite a bit of more impact, and that's one of the ways that we were looking at rerouting the traffic through that area. But certainly that's something we're going to consider more closely as we move forward. Thank you for your comment.
And the second comment had to do with environmental potential impacts with some of the tributaries to the Still River, and it's Cohasset Brook is in this area, Beaver Brook, Boggs Pond Brook, and the one I can never pronounce, which is Padanaram or something like that. I always get that one wrong. So yeah, there's a number of crossings that Padanaram. I'll get it. Someday I'll get it. There are a number of streams that this concept crosses. Bridges that would need to be built and potential impacts that we have definitely identified and called out associated with this concept, and particularly as new bridges need to be built. And so that would all need to be, if this concept were to move forward, certainly we need to look at the modeling and look at the potential impacts and how extensive they are. But there would be some.
I have Shara. I also have one more comment from Tom, who's raising his hand.
Good afternoon, this is Tom, Altermat, engineer, City of Danbury. I just wanted to know how to get copies of these concept plans. I mean, they're very complex, and we need time to look at them and study them. So if you could tell me that. And the second question really was on these CD roads that you're showing. I mean, obviously, I guess it's obvious, but they're limited access, so they won't provide access to the adjacent properties at all, right? I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
So I'll take that. So the first comment, Tom, regarding the concepts, we had provided a handout that has some of these concepts that you were showing in a PDF format as part of the handout. So if you need a little bit more detail, we can certainly send you. Also, soon, as Yolanda was saying, these concepts will be on our website. So you'll be able to access the actual line drawings of these concepts and be able to see them more closely. That is something that you have an interest in. Regarding your second comment, right now the CD road that is laid out has access points at North, Main, Madison, and Tamarack. Any of the intermediate points, you're right, will not have any connection to the CD road directly. They would have to use some of the local streets within Danbury to get to the CD road. So they would have to connect to the North, Main, Tamarack, or Madison at this point to go to the CD road. The whole reason for that is The purpose of the CD road is to allow that east-west flow and trying to limit the number of access points, which will help traffic flow smoother in that corridor.
And thank you.
All right, I don't have any other hand raised or chats, but there are two people that have called in. If they do have questions, they can speak up. All right, it's pretty quiet. I guess we can move on. Thank you.
I'm just going to share my screen back again.
Hi, sorry for jumping in last minute here. I was trying to chat, but my chat function's not working. Perry Salvain speaking here, representing downtown, but also from Barry's neighborhood. And I just wanted to add that I believe Barry's absolutely right. And especially with the high school at the top of the hill there, that's a lot of traffic going through two roads that are already treated kind of like race courses, and they probably shouldn't be. But I'm also curious how much of the traffic from New Fairfield and north that uses Golden Hill to access 84 westbound now would be deterred or sent a different direction with the CD system. We can get back to it at a later time, but those would be my comments on top of Barry's, and sorry it took me so long to add them.
Hi, Barry. Thanks for your comment. So the first one, I think as Barry pointed out, we're going to take a look at that closely in terms of that Golden Hill connection. To the second point, related to traffic that now comes from New Fairfield and uses to come down Golden Hill and then wants to get to 84 westbound, that traffic gets rerouted now. They can now use North Street to go westbound because they have connection to the CD road to go west on 84. So you'll probably see some decline, reduction in traffic on Golden Hill that was using, that connection to go to 84 westbound because there was no westbound entrance to 84 from North Street today. So as part of this, some of that traffic could use North Street as well. So that's a little of a benefit for that traffic that essentially was probably a cut-through traffic that was going through Golden Hill to get to 84 westbound.
Thank you. Yes, there's definitely a lot of that. So to Barry's point, it would definitely need to be a decent trade-off in order for it to be worth it for our area at least. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll look at it, and it was a good comment, Barry. So we'll certainly take a look at that more closely too.
All right, Shrat, one more question from John. Sorry, I know. John Gentile.
Hi. You're going to end up compounding that problem now coming from New Fairfield. You eliminate access on Route 39 and Golden Hill is eliminated to get on 84, but you said you can access 84 from North Street and Pandadam Road. Okay, that's already a nightmare coming off Route 37 there. That is already a nightmare now, and you can't access westbound. Can you imagine if you add a westbound entrance on there now? I don't know if anybody's familiar with where the shopping center is, and that takes you all the way up to Jeanette Heights or Jeanette Road. That traffic there is an absolute nightmare during the rush hour.
It's a good point, John. So one of the things that this is, the CD road is establishing that east-west connection that a lot of the roads now are north-south. So we talked about, way back when we were talking about needs and deficiencies, we were talking about how the roadways are all kind of radial. They don't have an east-west kind of connection. The CD road establishes that east-west road connection. Obviously, like you rightfully said, a lot of the volume is coming down, 39, coming down 37, and all those roadways are fairly significant. But the east-west connection with the CD road establishes helps the traffic spread out a little bit more. So I agree that today the volumes are fairly significant coming down on 39, and primarily because a lot of the people are just trying to figure out a way to get to westbound 84, which they don't have access to from North Street. So they're probably going down North Street, coming up Main Street and turning left. I think the CD road takes away a lot of that turnaround traffic, or traffic trying to circle around, trying to get to the place they want to be at. So it establishes that east-west connection, and also we added Tamarack to the mix. So some of that traffic that comes from the north on North Street gets a little bit distributed between Tamarack and North Street because they kind of tie in together somewhere up north pretty closely. So I think that east-west connection, although it seems like, and you saw from the model that it was kind of sort of pink and red there, is still busy because we are pulling a third of the traffic away from the highway in this concept. And that was the whole reason of putting the CD road together, is also trying to establish that north-south connectivity, almost create like a grid that allows that traffic to spread out even more. So I won't say that the traffic congestion on North Street will go away, but I think it certainly be more distributed. And we are looking at a 2040 or a future condition, which is something we are trying to address here. So I think as part of that whole effort, we are trying to create more spreading out of the traffic here, trying to make sure that it's more evenly balanced around versus trying to come at all one point like it does now and try to find its way around town. Hope that answers that question.
It does for now, but even Tamarack, the people already use Tamarack. They come around East Pembroke. They go off that way, come down East Pembroke to access the North Street to get around all that traffic congestion that comes down 37. They go up Golden Hill at CVS at that traffic light. They go up and access Golden Hill that come down to the westbound side right now. So it's the traffic coming from New Fairfield is a problem, and it's going to have to be looked at.
And it is being looked at within the limits of our project, which is kind of where the interchanges are. So again, this is one of the concepts. And as you'll see, we are looking at several others. We're going to have almost over 20 concepts, possibly, that several of them looking in the same area. So this is not what we are recommending. This is something as one of the concepts that will be evaluated against the other ones to kind of see which one kind of moves forward. So every concept like here has a pro or a con. So as we look at other concepts in this area, we might find something that looks at things that address some of those concerns.
Thank you.
All right, that's all I have, Shira. I think we can move on.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to move on to concept 6, which is called interchanges 3 and 4 Seeger Street in the eastbound direction. So this concept, as the name says, is located on the west side of the project corridor. So it's focusing more on interchanges 3 and 4, and mainly looks at the eastbound direction. So I'll get there in a second. So this concept overview is, as many of you know, and we've heard it several times from folks, this whole area between where Route 7 comes in and Lake Avenue exit is, it's a pretty congested area. It gets congested because all this traffic comes together. People are sometimes stopped trying to get to Lake Avenue. There's a lane drop where traffic slows down and doesn't know which way to move around. It's a very short section, it's about only 500 feet or so. And it creates a bottleneck, or especially in the evening when traffic is coming from New York, there's a lot of congestion in that area. And we've seen that pretty much every other day, that's a problem area. So this concept looks at that specific area. Again, we said in the eastbound direction only. We are looking at this concept to provide a new connection to Seeger Street. And that's mainly to take away that so-called beaving or a moving of traffic between 84 and Lake Avenue and Route 7 and 84. So it takes away all that conflicts there. The other element that we are providing here is lane continuity. So as I was talking about how that lane from Route 7, as you're coming from Route 7 from the mall, and you're trying to merge onto 84 eastbound, you're almost stopped and you lose a lane, and then someone wants to get to Lake Avenue, and as I was saying, notice cars just stopping there. So as part of this concept, we're using the weaving and the lane continuity toolbox. So these are the two elements that we used as part of our concept 6, and we also used both. We used lane continuity 1 in the case of concept 1. So we are applying the same two toolboxes here in concept 6. So looking at, I'm going to put my laser pointer here. So north is to your right. So this way is north. This is exit 4. This is Lake Avenue ramp. This is Route 7 coming in. This is 84 coming in from New York. So the mall is located in this area. So today, as you're coming down 84, one of the concerns is as you're coming near Lake Avenue, you have to move over a few lanes to get to Lake Avenue exit. And that is a problem because at the same time, the Route 7 traffic is trying to merge in and moves over to the left. And before it can do that, you lose a lane today. Essentially, all that traffic comes together and stops. So the purpose of this concept is to avoid or eliminate that whole weaving section. So what we're doing here is we are bringing in a new ramp to Seeger Street that goes essentially underneath the existing ramps. These ramps would have to be reconfigured, but it'll go underneath these ramps and tie into Seeger Street, right near the park and ride lot down here on Seeger Street. And this is the Chuck's Steakhouse, just for everyone's orientation. And this ramp would come off the same point where the 7 South ramp comes off, so it would just peel off going underneath these ramps and meet Seeger Street. What that does is all that 84 traffic now has to take Seeger Street and cannot use Lake Avenue to make that exit. What we are doing here is we're going to be providing a barrier that prevents anyone coming on 84 to take that Lake Avenue exit. So someone who misses this exit now cannot make that exit to Lake Avenue because that barrier would prevent someone making that exit. And the Route 7 traffic now can merge in and come into 2 lanes, and they would never lose lane continuity. They will establish the 2 lanes, they will keep going on the 2 lanes, and they would merge onto 84 past this Lake Avenue off-ramp. The point is, because of the barrier, they can't move into 84 here, so they would merge in past there. And then this Lake Avenue traffic would merge on like it does today. So this concept essentially eliminates that weave condition where traffic is crisscrossing each other with the Lake Avenue traffic trying to exit from 84 and the 7 traffic trying to enter from Route 7. Any questions on that? I could pause for like a few 30 seconds, and since I'm on the concept, anyone has any questions, Marcy?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. I don't see any at this time, so maybe you should just keep going and we'll wait until the end.
So some of
You
the
skipped the cost estimate.
Yeah. So going to the pros of this concept, reduces congestion on 84 and 7. So by creating that elimination of the weaving condition between 84 Lake Avenue and 7 and 84, it creates a lot better, smoothly operating performance of that area within the interchange 3 and 4. So again, this concept, as it says, is between interchanges 3 and 4. So the improvements within that, those 2 interchanges are pretty significant, and it improves the travel time, eliminates all those conflict areas. The work is mostly within the DOT right away, so no additional takes. All the properties that are impacted as part of the Seeger Street ramp or any of the work is within the right of way. It's typical construction methods, and there's very minimal environmental impact. Talking about the environmental resource analysis of the very minimal environmental impacts. And the beauty of this is this concept has no cons because it's such a small area and it's such a quick improvement that this brings to the project and is in a confined section. Doesn't have a lot of cons associated with it. So it's a very positive concept. The cost of this concept again falls within the first range, which is less than $500 million, which does not include right-of-way and engineering costs. So our recommendation for this concept is that this concept will reduce congestion, improve mobility, especially the movements from 84 to Lake Avenue and Route 7 to 84 within the 3 and 4 area. And we certainly see, as we saw in concept 2, that this concept should be combined possibly with other concept or should be evaluated more in detail, that we can see a merit for this concept to potentially advance further. With that, I will pause if there's any more questions on concept 6.
Yes.
Okay.
Sharon's raising her hand.
So, sorry. I mean, I think you have to acknowledge, Sharat, that you're going to put a whole lot of traffic on a short, not a short, but on a city street, on Seegers. So you take it out of the state right of way and you dump all that traffic onto Seeger Street, which, if you've ever seen that, I mean, it's busy as it is, but if you've ever seen it at the holiday time, you cannot move. So I'm not saying it doesn't warrant some further analysis, but I think you need to acknowledge that there are cons associated with it.
There are some, Sharon. I think one of the things that we saw when we did run a quick model of this area, trying to see what the diversions will be. I mean, certainly there's traffic that during the peak seasons would use, Seeger Street to get to the mall, because there's an entrance off of Seeger Street to get to the mall. The volume that we saw on this ramp coming down on 84 was about 100 to 150 in an hour, feeding in, because that's the amount of traffic, almost half of the traffic that uses Lake Avenue in that peak period. So about 300 or 400 exiting Lake Avenue today. So about half of that traffic would now get to Seeger Street. So when we looked at the pure volume of Seeger Street and of the ramp coming to Seeger Street, the ramp itself was not a heavy volume ramp in terms from what we looked at. So certainly there's a lot of latent demand on Seeger Street for other reasons. We didn't look at a detailed analysis of that Seeger Street corridor going into the mall. But what we were looking is figuring out ways of pushing the traffic to a different location from where it is now. So whatever that traffic was that uses Lake Avenue and comes in here, potentially some of that traffic is going on Seeger Street or going on Lake, either way. But we think that by establishing this connection, we might push some of that traffic back to where it's supposed to be here, because most of that might be going to Mill Plain and Lake. Some might be going to the mall, but a lot of that would be going back to where they come off the exit today. So it may be just a rerouting of traffic. So that's in the analysis area that we looked at, that's kind of what was our focus, is how this ramp connects here and how this volume coming off the ramp would impact any intersection here, the intersection of Lake and Seeger here. So that's kind of one of the areas that we looked at in more in detail. We didn't obviously focus, we have the volumes going in on Seeger Street all the way to the mall, but the peak times that you're mentioning during holidays and everything else, we haven't specifically analyzed that one condition. So it's a typical condition that we looked at.
Right. Yeah, I get that. And I see, and obviously I think we all acknowledge that whole weaving, to try to get off at 4 when the 7, northbound is not a good condition. I'm just saying we need to acknowledge it, that there will be some impact to that city street. So it's not like there won't be any impact.
Yeah, I do see that. And certainly we will, so this is something we'll look at more closely as we get into more details, and there might be ways to work that around. But this was, what we found here was a good way of taking away that weaving movement on the highway, which is a big issue, especially coming down this curve. Any other questions?
There's one more hand raised, and it's Frank Salvatore.
Hey, Frank.
I just, more of a comment, because I always thought where that off-ramp is on Seeger Street, you said it was a park and ride. I always equated it to Chuck's parking lot. It's really a parking ride?
So it is, there's a park and ride lot here, Frank, and there's also Chuck's parking. So it's kind of a combination of the two. So this ramp kind of splits in kind of halfway between the two.
Okay.
And we were kind of wondering why this is so empty here, and probably because a lot of people are not using the park and ride. But that's kind of what so we haven't really gone into detail about evaluating the capacity and the occupancy of that parking lot, but from the aerials, we did find a good chunk of that parking lot more towards the east side or the north side is unoccupied.
Yeah, take a picture of it after 3 o'clock in the evening. I bet you it'll be fuller.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. Okay, so this is Ray. This is my first PAC meeting, so it's nice to meet everybody. I'm going to be going over concept 9 here, which is Route 7 in the median. Let's change back to. Okay, so the concept location map for this one, this runs from exits 3 to exit 7, and it includes the Route 7 kind of connections to 84 at both spots. So an overview of concept 9. So the purpose of this one is to eliminate the weave of the Route 7 traffic coming in. The same one Sharad just spoke about in concept 6. A similar situation that happens over at exit 7. So Route 7 in this is going to be an express facility. So when you're on the Route 7, call it expressway, you will not be able to access exits 5 or 6. You're going to have to travel from exit 3 all the way to 7. The existing left-hand ramps, all those will be addressed. Those will become right-hand ramps. Similar to what Sharad mentioned previously, we'll have lane continuity through this concept. And this concept does not propose any changes at the local interchanges. So at 5 and 6, the existing interchange is what's going to be there in this concept. Pat, would you mind sharing?
You got it. Just gonna need a little bit to load.
All right. Okay, so this is the overall concept again. Same purposes that I just discussed. Route 7 is going to be in the median of this. So I'll show you a typical section in a few slides here, but basically Route 7 where it connects in to 84 is going to fly over, whatever 84 roads it crosses. It'll drop down in the middle and it's going to be, physically separated with barrier from 84. So if you're on 84 between 3 and 7 or Route 7 from 3 to 7, you won't be able to cross over. You're going to have to maintain on that road till the end. So at interchange 3, if you can see the existing 84 alignment kind of in the background there, we were able to relocate 84 so that we could up the design speed of those two curves. So that's going to help traffic flow through this part of the corridor. The left-hand ramps, as I mentioned, those are both going to be addressed. That's going from 7 to 84 and from 84 west to 7. And the weaving between 3 and 4, basically in the same method that was used in concept 6, we're going to address the weaving between 3 and 4 for 84 and 7. So there's going to be a new slip ramp to Seeger Street that 84 traffic would take prior to Lake Ave, so that 7 can basically use Lake Ave as an independent off-ramp to access Lake Ave. Next slide here. So interchange 4, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just swinging back there. So at Lake Ave, you can see the existing loop ramps going eastbound on 84. The existing on-ramp is going to get relocated to save some space, and the off-ramp, as I mentioned, gets relocated to Seeger Street over by Chuck's. And then looking westbound on 84, the existing off-ramp gets pulled in a little bit too tighter to the highway, and then the proposed on-ramp now is no longer a loop ramp going off Lake. It's across the street from the off-ramp, and that travels, west to westbound 84. Okay, so once you're at exit 5, you can kind of see the typical section here. Can you just zoom in a little bit, Pat? There you go. So in this scenario, there's 84 is on the outside of both directions. So you have 3 lanes of 84 with full width shoulders. Then you have a median barrier, and then you're going to have Route 7 in the center with shoulders appropriate for that size highway. In between there, you're going to have, again, another median barrier with your utilities. If you can pan out though now, Pat. So at exit 5, you see we still have a fullish interchange. We're not proposing to relocate any of the off or on ramps. So going eastbound is a little split. Westbound still comes off in its existing location. Interchange 6 is again the same thing. We have the partial interchange here. We're not proposing any new access points. So unfortunately, this concept does not give you direct access to Tamarack for hospital access. So interchange 7 is very similar to 3 in what we're able to fix. So the left-hand ramps that are currently out there, those are addressed, and those are now right-hand off and on ramps, again, from 84 to 7 and 7 back. And the weaving issue, if you can just pan a little bit, I guess to your right, Pat. The existing weave that happens from 7 south going to 84 east, that currently drops in on the left side of 84. And if you want to get off at exit 8 and 84 folks want to stay on 84, there is a weave that happens. So in this scenario, we were able to put that traffic kind of on a CD road to keep it separate from 84 traffic. So if you wanted to get from 84 to exit 8, if you follow Pat's cursor here, you would take an exit prior to the exit 7 off ramp. And that would give you direct access without having to fight traffic in the other direction. And then interchange 8 is the same thing as existing. We do add 1 lane for a short stretch here going westbound, but then it just ties back into existing. And throughout the whole concept, we maintain lane continuity. So you don't have 4 lanes pinching down to 2, opening back up to 4. The cross section is consistent through the whole corridor. Is that showing?
Not yet.
Not yet. I was just gonna say, we still see the Hollywood Squares pane.
Gotcha. While I'm doing this, does anyone have any questions on? I kind of moved through that quickly.
Yes, this
Okay,
is
here we
Francis
go.
Pickering from WestCog. It's an interesting concept, but it seems like there's a lot of missed opportunity for re-examining the partial interchanges and everything that connects the freeway. Question with the entire. It doesn't. If you have a crash, if you're doing to say area between the shutdown 84
Wait,
or vice versa.
Hey, Francis, this is Marcy. Before you go on a little more, I just want to, you are breaking up a lot for me, so I can't totally get what you're saying. I know you said about missed opportunities for examining partial interchanges, but then after
sorry
that,
about that.
you were going in and out. So I just want to make sure that everyone can hear you, and if others
yep.
can, just tell me to stop.
Sorry, I was on Wi-Fi. I'm back on cellular. The first one was missed opportunities about looking at some of the incomplete interchanges and awkward access to the local street network, along with the short ramps and whatnot. And the second point was that's a lot of lanes. It's like a 10-lane cross section through the center of the city. And it doesn't really provide you flexibility in case you have a bad crash. The system will still bottleneck. I know you're getting, I guess, wider shoulders, but you would have still underutilized potentially lanes on 7, or if you're doing major construction, are there ways to open the barriers to move traffic over onto 7 or 84 or vice versa?
At the moment, no, we haven't really looked at, and you'll see in a little bit, we flag some of your concerns as cons. Access to 7, once you're on it, could be problematic, right? If it's a permanent barrier to that separates 84 and 7, emergency access is going to be an issue. If there's an accident on 7, getting people out of there is going to be an issue. But at the moment, no, we haven't really flushed out every problem that could arise from this concept. And the root of this concept was really to try to separate 7 and 84 and see how that worked from a traffic perspective, which I'll get to again in a few slides here. So from that alone, it did do its job in keeping traffic moving. But you're correct. There are other things that could be done kind of at more of a local level, kind of a la carte with other concepts.
that could make this concept, if it was selected, fix a lot more problems. But this, as it stands right now, the purpose of it was separate traffic, see how it flows, and not necessarily make improvements everywhere else. Those kind of got covered under previous or proposed concepts. But I understand your concerns. It is not a perfect solution to a lot of things.
All right, any other questions? Maybe you should just go on to the pros and cons and
Sure.
finish concept 9.
Okay, so as you called out, it is a 10-lane section with full width shoulders. And at some spots, this is going to be, I know the perimeter of this section shows that there's going to be a vertical face wall. That's the case in some places. Other places we can have a TOA slope, either up or down gradient to meet grade. But it is a very wide section. This is at the moment probably the widest section we've looked at in any of the concepts. So from a traffic perspective, as Sherrod had mentioned, green represents, kind of free flow traffic. Red and pink is traffic being backed up. Separating 84 and 7 traffic completely, that allows the traffic to move very smoothly. And this is exit 7 here. That's the weekday AM. And a similar situation happens the weekday PM over at exit 3. Taking that much traffic off of 84 allows both roads to travel very smoothly. So the quick analysis for traffic, it reduces the congestion on 84 and 7. As you can guess, separating the traffic does that. The average speed, again, will increase with the reduction in traffic on either road. And then the number of stops on 84 and 7 is also reduced because you have less places where vehicles are, in conflict with one another. So the pros of this, from traffic, again, it reduces congestion on 84 and 7. The weaving situation, I know it's now been said that it is maybe an issue at exit 3, but we're able to eliminate the weave at exit 3 and at exit 7 between 7 and 84. All the existing left-hand ramps at 3 and 7 become right-hand ramps. Lane continuity is carried through the whole corridor. And in our opinion, this requires typical methods where it's basically box widening of the highway. So it's nothing unusual where we're necessarily impacting existing traffic while building out the new. So some of the cons, as you had caught, Route 7 traffic has no access to 4, 5, and 6. So not only if somebody was to accidentally get on 7, can they not get off, but emergency access to 7 could be a problem. You would have to find a way to let emergency vehicles slip in between 4, 5, and 6 in case something happened where they couldn't come in from either the entrance or exit point of either highway. Because the typical section is so wide, right-of-way impacts are going to be a problem with this. And similarly, streams, water courses, any environmental items that are adjacent to the highway, those could be impacted because of how wide this is. It does not improve any pedestrian or bicycle movements, and really local access is not improved because we don't make any local interchange improvements. So you can't get to the highway. You can't get to Danbury Hospital and downtown if you were to get on Route 7. You'd have to stay on 84 on the outside of the highway to do that. So the cost estimate for this one, this falls in the middle range of the categories listed. So $1 to $3 billion. It is inflated to the midpoint of construction, and it does not include right-of-way or engineering costs. So this is one of the larger cost concepts we've looked at. And our recommendation, so this concept does have merit for reducing the congestion and improving mobility. So we feel it should be evaluated further in a future phase of the concept. And with that, are there any more questions, concerns? We could go back to the map if you want to look at a specific area.
Watching out. People can feel free to speak up or raise your hand. Just if you're going to speak and you haven't raised your hand, just introduce yourself so we know who is speaking pretty easily.
Francis Pickner again. In the last concept, will you be looking at having non-barrier separation between 84 and 7? For instance, I'm thinking of HOV lanes, which often have a vacant space between the HOV lane and the main part of the freeway.
So that's been discussed, but we have not come up with a concept that we're going to look at for that. The risk with that is you're kind of relying on people's following of the rule. If people were to want to swing between the two, that could be kind of a safety problem. So far, anything where we have 7 and 84 adjacent to each other, we've had a barrier there to keep them separate, at least for whatever duration or length that we feel they need to be.
And also, Francis, this is Sharad, just to add to that, most of these concepts are looking on the main line. We are trying to meet design standards and trying to follow what the required shoulder widths are. So there might be some places, on a short-term basis, there could be some compromises, but at this level where we're looking at long-term, our focus is mainly to address the inadequate shoulder widths and any kind of median improvements that are needed as part of these concepts, just to make sure that all the concepts are at the same level.
Right. I just questioned because you are, this concept would require 4 shoulders and a barrier. So you're talking about a lot of space that potentially could be used for other purposes.
Right. Right. And those are adjustments we'll, probably be looking at the next level. So this concept 9 is also going to be evaluated against concept 1, which we showed you in the November meeting, which has a similar type of application in terms of addressing the main line. So obviously concept 1 in cross section is fairly narrower compared to 9 is. So when we kind of go into that level of evaluation, these will be compared against each other.
Great. We have another raised hand from James Root.
Yeah, hello, this is James Root. Just a few things. These are more strategic. I don't mean to stop the flow of the discussion of the details, but I put a few of these questions in chat. One, I wanted to revisit the purpose statement, since it's been stated that everything builds off of that. And it may seem like I'm quibbling, but I just, if possible, I'd like a further explanation of what the word corridor means in that. I mean, literally, because that's important. Are the walls, meaning Danbury in that metaphor, or is that part of that? Because if this is, the purpose is really just to decrease congestion on 84 itself, I think it should be stated explicitly. I'm not judging that, but I think an explicit statement of that reality in the purpose statement, and maybe it's too late now, might be a good thing. And also, if possible, before the end of the meeting, I wanted to get an overview of the review process. This might be on the website, but if we can understand, where we stand and if any changes have been made. I had a conversation with Sharad, which was productive, and he indicated also quite transparently that there have been some changes made in the process, and that under the last administration, the last federal administration, and that there is more of a, it's easier to segment this whole project, which raises the stakes with the review process, because it would seem that with the segmentation, there's much more likelihood that some of these projects could be green lighted and pushed forward more quickly. So I know that's a lot. I just wanted to put that point. Again, that those are more of a wide focus. Those are kind of a wide view questions. And so anyway, that's enough for me. Thanks.
So if I can jump in for a sec, I think we are going to get to process in a later slide that we can, that's probably a good time to jump into that in terms of your segmentation question. Yeah, and I invite the rest of my team here to chime in on this quick sort of synopsis of corridor. But the way we've been looking at corridor, obviously, if we increased the congestion or decreased congestion on the highway to the detriment of all of the local roads, that would certainly not be a success in this project. So the reason that the word corridor was chosen is because it recognizes it's the highway, it's the roads adjacent to the highway, it's pedestrian and bicycle traffic adjacent to the highway, and really it's other modes of transportation when we look at the adjunct bus and rail and that sort of thing. So does it go throughout the entire city of Danbury? Absolutely not. But does it stop at the highway edge? It does not do that either. So that's not super crisp, but it is a wider view in terms of corridor than just the limits of the highway.
What I'd like to add just briefly, James, is when I get to the little process and timeline slide, I'll talk a little bit about the NEPA and the fact that we're actually in pre-NEPA right now. So I'll get into that in a couple minutes.
All right.
So before we move on to the NEPA stuff, there was two kind of separate chats that came in from David McCullum that I just want to make sure were answered. Why does concept 9 exclude changes to interchange 8? Or are those going to be part of a separate concept? And then also, I'm just reading these together, though they're separate. Can the traffic modeling be used to factor in potential induced demand? So they're very separate questions, but I think maybe we should address these before moving on.
Sure, I can take that. So go ahead.
I was gonna say the exit 8 question, yes, that is being looked at in a separate concept. So when we had laid out concept 9, we stopped just short of 8, and shortly thereafter realized 8 has its own set of issues. So that at the moment is being looked at individually, not necessarily wrapped up in, say, something from all the way from exit 3. Exit 8 standalone is being looked at, and then in conjunction with some other concepts.
And on the second comment on the latent demand, so the modeling that was done related to looking at this concept does look at latent demand from local traffic, especially traffic that should be on the highway, uses local streets now. So by providing a wider cross section and allowing 7 and 84 to have their own cross section or own lanes, pushes a lot of that local traffic back onto the highway. So there's induced demand on the highway from diversion from local streets back onto the highway, which is where their traffic should be. As far as regional latent demand from New York and other areas around, there's some of that, but certainly not to the level that there might be potentially. So it's very hard for us to understand diversions that occur due to situations that happen outside of our limits, outside of our corridor. But it does account for some sort of increase in capacity in the corridor that may get drawn in to this portion. But more so, it does on the local level. So we've seen in our model runs that a lot of that local traffic gets pushed into the main line back because now it's got 5 lanes. It's got 2 lanes in 7 and 3 lanes in 84. So we've seen that in concept 1 as well. Hopefully that answers your question.
It looks like it did.
Right. So I don't see any more hands up. And so I think we can move on. And I think we've addressed all of the questions. People either chatted the same questions that they spoke about, or so I think we're in good shape.
And I will try to pick up the pace on our next concept because we are running a little bit out of time. The concept 7, if you thought things were crazy so far, just hold on. This is known as Tunnel West, and we can go to the next slide. So just to orient everyone, this concept takes place at the merge of I-84 with Route 7, as you see 7 coming down from the bottom of that slide, and it's right in the midst of exits 3 and 4. And the complete concept runs along about 2 miles, as shown in the red box. Next slide. So this concept does a few things. It straightens the current horizontal alignment between interchanges 2 and 5 to eliminate that really wide swinging awkward curve through this stretch of highway. It also eliminates the existing left-hand ramp at interchange 3. And as we've been talking about throughout the meeting, provides lane continuity, meaning that you don't stop and drop and add lanes and cause difficult merges. Go to the next slide. So the aerial view gives us a much better sense of the alignment of this concept and the linkage back into the existing highway. On the left, it's just before exit 2 near Lake Kenosha. And if anyone who's driving this can point to that, that would be great. On the left of this, that's on the left, and near exit 5 to the east, which is on the right-hand side, it merges in near Franklin Street. So the proposed tunnel section is shown in that red and yellow cross hatching. And then all of the yellow hatch is just open highway. And if you look to the up or to the north above the tunnel section, you can see a cluster of buildings. That's the exactly. That's the WestCon athletic facilities. with University Boulevard just sort of intersecting the tunnel at a kind of a near 90-degree angle leading up to that. And then to the south of this option, there are a number of residential areas, a couple of condominium complexes off of Scuppo Road. And then towards the middle of the tunnel and you go down, you can see sort of a square of green. That sort of bisects the Mill Ridge Primary School and the West Side Middle School Academy. So that just gives us a little sense of where this tunnel would go through. I think we can go to the next slide. My favorite slide is coming. So this is a profile view, as if we were standing on the side of the highway looking at it, in profile with the cars driving. They should come in here. That's the existing ground, and see now the road comes in where the cars would sort of drive from left to right. And if we can advance this, the tunnel is that orange section, and then we'll add the open road is shown in green. So this profile demonstrates the existing topography in the brown line and the magnitude of the depth of the tunnel, which at its deepest point would be about 160 feet below grade. And then the location of University Boulevard is shown just to the left of that, where we've got about 50 feet of horizontal depth below grade, just to give us a horizontal reference. And so then you see immediately to the left and right, or the east and west of that tunnel, in the green sections, the new highway would require some cut from the brown line, so some excavation of earth. And as you move west or on the left, you'll see a little divot there, and that would be fill. So it just gives us a sense of what this tunnel and the roadway is going through. I think we can jump to the next slide. So the tunnel option presents a number of logistical and practical constraints. Is it impossible to build? Absolutely not. But is it unique? Yes, it is. So the equipment to construct the tunnel is pretty specialized and uniquely very, very large. So if you look at the two graphics on the right, you get a sense of scale, looking at the proportionality of the cars in the top graphic and the people next to the horizontal drill rig, which is called a tunnel boring machine, in the bottom photo. It's just massive. So if you think about it, even transporting this large equipment to the site would be a pretty significant undertaking. Given the construction magnitude and the length of this, we would expect this concept to take on the order of 5 years to complete, with some pretty sophisticated staging and sequencing of work, specialized contractors, and the not so insignificant need to dispose of about 300 cubic yards of material that would be drilled out in the tunnel section and the overboard burden. That's over 20,000 standard size dump trucks. So that is a lot of material coming out of here. Jump to the next slide. So the upside of this concept is that it would greatly improve that awkward curvature and confusion for people who don't do it all the time in this reach of the highway. And because it would be off alignment from the existing highway, it could be constructed without interruption or rerouting of existing traffic, which is always great. And as I indicated earlier, the concept would maintain lane continuity, which is desirable. So hold on to those positive thoughts because the cons get pretty long. Next slide. So the downside of this concept has a couple of components. The first and the most profound would be a direct conflict with the West Lake Water Treatment Plant. So the alignment of this concept goes directly through the facility, and because of its specific location, it is just unavoidable. If you look in the upper right graphic, there's a teal outline. There's actually two properties, and it shows where that is, and it is just it's right where the thing merges in. So it's not like it could swing around it. And this treatment plant is pretty significant. It has a design capacity of 10 million gallons a day of drinking water. It serves about 65,000 people. So it's a lot. Relocation of that plant would be a major undertaking in and of itself. It would add substantial cost and time to the project. We did a really back of the envelope rough estimate of about $70 million and upwards of 10 years of project delay due to the need to first find an alternate location for the facility, undertake environmental assessment of a pretty substantial independent new infrastructure project, which would not only involve the treatment plant and the tanks on that site, but also the distribution network both to the plant from the water supply source and from the plant going out to customers, as well as design, permitting, construction. It's a big, big deal. So that's first and foremost. beyond the water treatment plant impact. And unlike, I think, all of the other concepts that we have looked at that occur near the existing highway, this concept would bring a new highway through residential neighborhoods that are not currently near the highway, and with a decidedly more rural feel. As you can see, there's a photo on the bottom right. It's more of a suburban sort of flavor to this. So this would create visual as well as noise impacts, and it would also physically separate a number of residential neighborhoods with a brand new highway going through it. One of the other impacts of this, the large, oh, sounds like a bus is in the background. If actually, could we go up back to the aerial? Because I want to show something really quickly on that. One of the things that would happen with this, there you go. So we have this spur of I-84 where it is now, the big sort of upside down hump. And that would need to remain to serve Route 7 and the Lake Avenue area. But then it creates sort of a redundant highway system, which is twice the maintenance and not particularly efficient. So we've got this sort of remnant spur that we develop as part of this project as well. Okay, we can go back to the other one. And then beyond those impacts, which are pretty significant. Secondarily, the concept doesn't reduce congestion at the merge areas. It does pose some concerns with safety and security as that we would expect with all tunnels, just because they're underground and out of sight. And it introduces long-term operation and maintenance that is much more involved and more costly as compared to the open highway that we have today. We can go to the next slide. So the cost of this is also up there. It's on the order of $3 to $5 billion, which is a whole order of magnitude greater than some of the other concepts that we've been evaluating. And it only addresses one segment of the project and one aspect of the project need. Go to the next slide. So given the impacts associated with specifically the Westlake Water Treatment Plant, as well as the anticipated neighborhood impacts, with consideration given to the construction challenges and cost, we do recommend dismissal of this concept for further consideration. And I went really fast because we're over time, but I'm happy to go back and answer questions. And
all right, I'm looking for questions, Janine. I think people are tapping out a little bit. We still have a good number of people here. I have probably about 5 people that have left.
Okay. We're almost done too.
Yeah, so maybe if no one's raising their hand or I don't see anything in the chat, maybe we can just move on, and then people can always write in their comments, and we're of course going to answer any or write them in the chat. You know, we always answer everything as best that we can, even after the fact.
Okay, then I think Andy is up next.
Yeah, and I'll try and be brief, just wrap things up a little bit. I do want to touch on a couple of things. So, you know, the first thing, upcoming concepts, really the big one we're going to focus on next time is non-highway options. Now, non-highway options are always really, really important and need to be considered. And of course, especially in today's environment and with the uncertainty of what the future might bring. All of these elements will help to encourage alternatives to using your car and using the highway to get back and forth to work, as well as other things. And all of these can contribute to reducing congestion and improving mobility. Again, back to our purpose statement, reducing congestion and improving mobility in the corridor, in this area of Greater Danbury. Also important to note that these ideas will involve many other entities besides the state and the federal government. We're going to need to work with private businesses regarding telecommuting and flexible work schedules. We'll need to coordinate with city and local transit, HART, Metro North, for example, regarding intermodal connections, commuter shuttles, and you know, bike and ped facilities. So it's going to be everybody working together. So it's kind of that bigger picture that this project is all about. let's jump to the next slide. This is the process and timeline slide. Now we've seen this, over the last few meetings, and I just want to focus in on, where we are now is developing the concepts, and we hope to be done with this phase by later this summer and have our concepts done. Also, we're hoping the next kind of bigger milestone is to have a range of alternatives and make recommendations of moving projects into the environmental study phase by the end of 22. Now, if you look at this, and this is a little bit, James, towards your question, I just want to touch on where we are now, the concept study. We're in pre-NEPA right now. So we're setting ourselves up for future NEPA. As you look at those blue boxes, for some projects will require the detailed environmental study, meaning you're familiar with it probably, like an environmental impact statement or environmental assessment, versus some of the simpler projects might have abbreviated environmental studies, less complex projects, and those are like categorical exclusions for people who are familiar with that lingo. As far as the NEPA regulations right now, the key regulations are still really the same. And there's three big ones. You have to connect logical termini. You have to have independent utility. So whatever project gets proposed out of the pink area that's going to move forward on its own has to have connect logical termini, have independent utility, and the big one is not restrict consideration of alternatives for reasonably foreseeable improvements, so down the road. So those are the three elements. Those are still the same. I think some of the changes that have happened, and we can speak more at another time, may have to do with some of the time frames that the federal government wants to see us in how we get through the NEPA process. But essentially, that's going to be later, starting probably after 2022, once we have our recommendations. So that's going to come down the road, and I'm sure we'll be doing a PAC meeting or several as we get more into that and closer to it. So maybe we go to the next slide, and this is really just the next steps. And these are more short-term next steps. We want to wrap up the concepts by the end of this summer, and then we want to start establishing some screening criteria and performance measures to help us determine what the best, I'll call them, performing concepts are right now. At our next PAC meeting, we're going to focus on concept 4. It's really important, like I said, these non-highway options. Also, if we may present some other concepts and get into some of the screening criteria, we're not sure. I do want to just let everybody know, we've shown you a few concepts. We've been looking at about 20 or a little over 20 concepts. And our plan is not to go over every single one in depth at these type of meetings. They're all going to go on our website as they become available with their evaluations. And we can always present ones that anybody might ask for. If you have one that does interest you that we haven't presented, we can do that. What we've been doing is really focusing on the best performing ones to this point, and also some of the out of the box ones, just to show you kind of the bigger picture of what's being looked at. But again, we can tailor our presentations to wherever the interest is. So I encourage everybody to get on the website and look at the concepts as they start getting on there. And then further down the road is when we're going to develop this range of alternatives that various project environmental phase, whether they're complex or simpler. And so that's a little bit down the road towards the end of 22 or so. And that's pretty much it. Thank you, everybody. And, we'll stay around for any other questions that you may have.
Andy, while people are thinking, I will just say that there's nothing that has changed in the NEPA regulations that would allow us to approach this in 20 little projects individually that somehow didn't cross a threshold, but collectively could have a big impact. To slice and dice and pull the project apart. What we can do, if there is something, as Andy mentioned, if a piece of work has independent utility, meaning it can be constructed no matter what else we do and it stands on its own, we could do that ahead of the NEPA process or as a parallel. maybe a much simpler environmental evaluation, but it's not like we can take 100 feet of road at a time and somehow make the argument that does not raise up to the level of needing a full NEPA environmental assessment.
All right, I don't see anyone raising their hand. So with that, I guess what I would say is, you know this project team, their info is put on the website, is all available. So if you have any follow-up questions, go check it out, send some emails, and we'll be posting all of our follow-up stuff within the coming, the meeting summary and anything else in the coming week or so. So we appreciate you spending a little extra time with us today. We know this was a lot to get through, and we also want to hear your feedback. If you felt like it was too much, maybe we should scale it back by one, and we can do that next time. And really, as Andy said, our goal is to only focus on those that have a lot of potential or are really like getting eliminated early. So any other thoughts, comments, questions? I'm looking and I don't see anything. So with that, I think this was a great meeting and we appreciate everyone coming.
Indeed. Good questions, everyone.
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Thank
you.